In this video, I will talk about a concept that I call test your way to success. And I want to sort of talk about it specifically in, let's say you're trying to create an email copy. That is the example I was used in this video. However, you can really use this way of thinking in like all your business or in like your personal life, like basically in every single aspect of your life, you can use this way of thinking. And I really think this is super important because it has allowed me to sort of create a process which I just follow to test my way to success. And I've learned it from multiple mentors, multiple programs. It's quite simple and it's not super advanced, but however, I think you will sort of appreciate it and find a lot of value in this when I just list it out. So let me just go ahead and write everything out and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so now I will take this as an email copy example. So basically how you can test your way to find an email copy that works in your niche. But as I said before, this can be done in multiple aspects, but I'll tell you in the email copy example, and you can sort of think if you want to make this in another part of your business or any other else. All right. So we want to create an email copy. The first sort of step you need to make is if you're like completely new to your niche or you haven't done anything before, you really need to make a guess of what you think will work. Like there's really no other way around it. And you've probably done this before. You really make a guess of what you think will work. You create an email copy and make a guess. All right. Now you've done that. You've sort of created an initial version. You've created a guess that is done. You move on to the next step, which is variables. Here you need to sort of define which variables are sort of most important, basically the different parts of your copy. So as an example, we can say like the content of the email. Of course, that is quite important. That is a variable that can sort of have an effect if this email copy will be effective or not. It can also be the offer that you're presenting in the email copy, of course, also very important. And then we can have like CTA, what kind of call to action do you have at the end? That can have a big impact. So these three we want to focus on, and we think that these three are the main variables that can sort of have an effect of this entire test, basically. All right. When that is done, we move on to metrics plus KPI. So basically, we need to, first of all, decide what type of metrics we want to optimize for. And in this example, I can just say like positive reply rates is a very good one to use at first, because a direct response from our creating an email copy is the positive replies. So we can tell that, all right, if we make a good email copy, we will probably get more positive replies than before. So let's say PRR is the metric and we want to try for this test. And this is important to keep one metric at a time for each test. So yeah, you say positive reply rate. I want to sort of track that. And then KPI, if you don't know what that stands for, that is key performance indicator. So basically the percentage of these metric we aim for to achieve. Let's say we want to have 2% positive reply rate. All right, that is what we're aiming for. We move on to the next. Here in step 4, we need to establish a sample size, because when you're doing any form of test, you can't expect to send 5 emails and make a test out of that and assess the metrics. That volume is way too low. You need to have a big enough volume. So let's say we want to send out 300 emails because we think that's a reasonable enough sample size to reach out, send out, and then assess the metrics. That we think that is a reasonable sort of sample size, basically. Done, move on. Time. This is quite important because you will probably have some follow-up emails also included in the sequence. And then you can really just sort of assess the test and analyze it after all those follow-ups has been done. Because it's not fair to sort of want to analyze the test when you haven't really done all the follow-ups and all the messages haven't really been sent out. So you set up a reasonable time for you to give the test to be able to complete, basically. And let's say for all the emails to be sent and all the follow-ups as well to be sent, we need 2 weeks. All right. It's just an example, and that is done. Now we're at step 6, where basically we start to run the test. And as you've seen here, I've written ceteris paribus. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but if you haven't heard of it before, it basically means that something like everything else stays the same. That is a very important part about this, because when we are testing, as soon as you're making a test, you need to keep test one variable at a time. That is why I mentioned that PRR is the metric we're tracking now, because if I run the test 1 week in, I decide, all right, I don't feel like this CTA that we're having in the email, I don't feel that is right, and I change it mid-test. Then like you can't assess the test because you haven't given it enough time to actually test. So like don't listen to your feelings and your emotions and what you think. Just let the test run, do nothing, just let it be and see what it tells you. And I totally understand, like when you start a campaign, maybe don't see enough responses coming in as you think and hope for, your emotions kick in and you want to basically change it as best as possible, but you're really doing it a disservice because, again, you need to let the test play out before you can actually make a logical decision. And if you're changing multiple things at once, let's say you change 3 things at once and everything goes great. But now you have changed 3 things and you don't really know which of those things really made the game changer. It might be one that made it super, super, super good, and the 2 other changes maybe made it worse. But you can't know because you have changed multiple things at once instead of just one. All right, awesome. That is done. After that, we track the metrics. So it's very, very important that you actually track like this. We decided we want to track the positive reply rate, and you also track it super, super, super like exact, because if you don't track it exactly, this test won't be a good test and you can't really see if the test is valid or not. So yeah, it's quite common sense. You need to track the metrics. All right, then we are basically at the last step. And once we have sort of given it enough time, we ran the test and we have tracked all the metrics. So we have all the data. We can see, all right, this is how many messages we sent out and this is how many positive replies we got. Now we can tell, did we land in KPI or not? If we did, yes, awesome. We can scale this and get even more calls booked or whatever it is. Positive reply rates. No, if we aren't within KPI, so we are below 2%, and take this with a grain of salt because like if we are at 1.8%, you might still think that's good to scale. However, if we maybe are like 0.1% and we want to be closer to 2, then it might be the case to sort of reassess, but we can be sort of close to that. It's still up to you, but let's say we are way out of KPI, we are like 0.2%, and then no. That doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, because really now we actually think that the thing we just put together, the test we did, we at least know that doesn't work. So what you do then is that you change one variable. So if you remember here, we decided that the 3 variables we have are content, offer, and CTA. Now we know that these 3 combined together, if we are out of KPI, we know that these 3 together doesn't work and we need to change one of them. Remember, one at a time. Because it might be the case that if we change one and keep the other same, we might be in KPI. So we need to change one at a time. And we decide that also one important thing is that you want to pick the one you think is the most important one, because you want to move the needle as much as possible. So we decide the offer is the thing to change because we think it can have the most impact on the positive reply rates. Then we change that variable to something else, keep the other 2 the same, and we then basically redo the test. So like with enough time and with enough testing, there's really no way for you not to get a positive reply rate of 2%, because there is only like limited amount of offers that you can actually sort of write and create. If you just give it enough time, you will eventually find something that your market resonates with, and that gets you in a KPI. But then you also understand that, let's say we first track positive reply rate, then maybe when we have gotten the positive reply rate in KPI and we are happy with that, we maybe move on to something else like appointment booking rate, but that is something completely different. Then we need to do tests according to that. But that is basically the framework I'm using to test different variables and metrics. This is a great example for email copy because it's very like easy to explain. But you can basically, as I said, use this in so many other parts of your life and your business. Given enough time and enough tests and enough rationality and logical decision making, you will find something that works. That's just basically how it works. So hopefully I explained this well enough. As I said before, hopefully you found some value in this and can sort of have an understanding of how you can make similar tests. And as I said, also, it's not very advanced. It's quite simple, but just keep in mind that you want to be very rational about your decision, because you can only make logical and rational decisions once you have let a complete test run out and you can actually track the metrics and take a look at the data. You can't go around changing things mid-test and expect you to see results, because you will just ruin the test all the time. All right, hopefully this made sense. Have a really good day.